Two other key recommendations of Stop Climate Chaos Cymru are to shift away from the car to more sustainable transport options and to invest in training centres to develop the skills needed for a low-carbon, sustainable future. What would your party do to ensure that actions are taken in these areas?
Firstly, we see great scope in expanding the use of public transport. We don't believe that you can encourage people into public transport purely by making the driving of a car more of a more difficult thing to do and a more expensive thing to do. We think you need to encourage people by changing the culture, changing behavioural habits, providing more information to people about the range of public transport, and we need to get it more integrated between buses and trains. I know many people who use buses and trains, and quite frankly, the huge mix-mash between timetables does not help them. So we need to provide a more coordinated, strategic level of thinking on regional development and planning around those sustainable forms of transport. But what we also need to do is to look at the range of courses that we develop in Wales. We need to provide for green skills, green jobs, and the planning for green jobs needs to be part of the strategic thinking of the Wales Spatial Plan. I think that's a very crucial point, because unless we integrate that sort of thinking, then we're not going to provide the sorts of skills and the new technologies that we need for the future.
Well, again, I want to say that I feel that in the Labour-led Assembly Government we have made a very good start on this. We've introduced the free bus passes, for example, which have opened up a whole new world to elderly and disabled people and have put additional money into buses. We've had safe routes to schools, we've had investment in the railways, we've done an enormous amount. So I think that we have learnt what we can do in order to get people off out of the car onto public transport, and now again we need to make those mainstream. We need a big push to ensure that this applies to the whole of Wales, that it's not just projects but that we do it in every sector. And so I totally support having these training centres, because I think that this will all bring about jobs and greater savings of efficiency savings.
Well, first of all, the issue that we've had over the last 4 years with the Labour-led Welsh Assembly is they've put too much emphasis on non-environmentally friendly projects, such as £8 million on the north to south air link, which basically flies politicians and bureaucrats up and down the country. We want to take that money and reinvest that into, for example, electrifying the valley lines, so we get a nice, clean and green commuter network in the valleys, and also putting £2,000 into companies who want to take on unemployed young people, so that we can put in the skills that are required for the new low-carbon economy.
I've recently published a document called A Green Print for the Valleys, which is a green job creation plan which proposes improving our public transport, training young people and creating jobs at the same time, and I hope that we'll be able to implement some of those policies in the next Assembly Government.